Oh, hey, I'm glad you're here. Comedy is a funny thing. Now that has to be a bumper sticker, a book, and or a documentary. But nonetheless, it is interesting because what connects to some people and is humorous is not for another person. For instance, one of the jokes I think about the most is from Mitch Hedberg.
I can't wait till this set is over because I have a roll of lifesavers in my pocket and pineapple is next.
I saw that maybe 20, 25 years ago, and it still amuses me. Now, to someone else, that might not even be entertaining. It's a fact. Pineapple is the best. But I get it if it's not your cup of tea. Also, just some things are hard to laugh at. Death, of course, we won't go that route, but maybe relationships. Relationships aren't always hilarious. Sometimes it's sad. I remember I dated someone, we had different interests. I love ninja movies. She was an astronaut, and it didn't work out. She just needed her space. Space. Astronaut? All right. Well, don't fault me for trying. Growing up in our family video store, I watched a lot of horror and sci fi and action, but every once in a while, I'd cross paths with a comedy. Like Dream Team with Michael Keaton, Christopher Lloyd, Peter Boyle. Perhaps you've seen that one. It is hilarious, not talked about enough. We should probably cover it. But I'd recommend it to people, and sometimes it'd be their new favorite, and others it would just be fine. And that's shocking because it's way better than fine. Sometimes people would hear that I grew up in a video store and they'd ask where I was from, and I could never really get into genealogy on the account I'm afraid of lamps. Genies. Lamps? Is this thing on? A genie, though not so different from the subject of this episode's film. We have a trickster, a troublemaker, a roustabout, if you will. And now I might not be a. But on this episode, we talk about. From 1994, tragically underseen, and the more people should see. So hopefully this episode on will spark more interest in. All right, I'll stop with that, and we'll just get to the episode. But first, one of my daughter's favorite jokes. I did not write this one. Why do ducks have feathers? To cover their butt quacks. There you go. Now let's get into this episode on. I know, I said I wouldn't do it again. Enjoy.
Innocence can be hell. Innocence can be hell. Can be hell. Innocence can be hell. Innocence can be hell.
Greetings and salutations. This is VHS, and I am your host, Dirk Marshall. I am joined by Ken Potocki. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, the film that brings us together is Funny Man from 1994. I believe this was your idea.
Yes, it was. Funny Man is one of those. You get to a point when you're a movie fan, you're a movie collector, especially when you like to go off of the mainstream. I think we've all gotten to a point where it's almost like we may not have seen everything, but it feels like we've heard of everything. It's like there's no stones left to completely unturn. So around the time of the Christmas holiday season of 2020, which in itself was already one heck of a year filled with a lot of energy and
Yeah.
just vibes that may not have been good, but there was certainly, a lot of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And around the Christmas holiday season, I somehow stumbled upon the poster online. And I just saw it almost looked like it would be like a full moon movie. I just saw
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
jester on there, and I see the name Christopher Lee, and I'm just like, funny man, what is it? It's almost like you will these things into existence through it. Because I asked so many of my horror convention friends, some of my YouTube fellow movie collector friends, not a single person I knew had ever even heard of this thing. and you watch it, and it is one of the most surreal,
Yes.
insane kitchen sink
Hmm.
things I've ever seen. And it's like every single scene of this could be a meme
Hmm.
these days. Why is this not huge? So it's one of my go-to recommendations because I know 9 times out of 10, I'm probably talking to somebody who doesn't know it exists. So it's a great conversation starter of a movie, and it truly is unique. You know, you could describe it with other things that it takes a little bit of inspiration from, but it all adds up to a whole that is truly unlike any other movie I personally have seen.
Yeah, my history with Funny Man is that I found it at a record shop. It was just a bootleg. I'm pretty sure it was not an official DVD, and this is late '90s probably. And so I picked it up, and it looked terrible. And so you could say like, oh, I get it. Like I think at the time I thought, oh, it's like a Wishmaster kind of ripoff kind of thing, which is not what it is. But then I didn't really think about it until you suggested it. And I was like, I own that. And I went through everything in my collection. It's not here. Somewhere over time, I lent it to someone who didn't lend it back to me. They probably also didn't watch it. And so it's just out there floating in the ether. So I did what you had done, and I tracked down the German set. There it is. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful
Well,
set.
you know what's going to happen now. Now that you bought this,
Oh,
your
yeah.
DVD is it's going to turn up right there.
Oh, I think Vinegar Syndrome's just going to put it out. They'll just put it out.
Absolutely. But you are right. For those listening, it's, one of the German media book
Hmm.
editions of it. And I believe they released it with 3 different covers. I can't believe I'm saying this about Funny Man. It is a 4 disc
Yes.
collection of, like, does Oppenheimer even have a 4 disc edition anywhere? I don't think so. But Funny Man, you got which has a Blu-ray, 2 DVDs, the soundtrack,
Hmm.
which, just to showcase for you, I also at one point had tracked down an audio cassette of the soundtrack
What?
that was floating around on eBay. So for the time when I originally found this movie, I actually had a brief email correspondence with the director. Really,
Oh,
really nice guy,
wow.
writer,
Yeah,
director. And he
yeah.
was telling me about the promotions that they did when the movie came out. This soundtrack cassette was one of them. Apparently, they also released Funny Man playing cards that had sex lines on
I
them,
believe it.
which I mean, if I could track something like that down. So it was a cassette. And then in the 2000s, there was also a special edition Subversive DVD of the
Oh,
film,
wow.
which is pretty loaded in and of itself. It also has a booklet in it.
Is it in German as well?
No, this is US USD.
Wow.
It's out of print though. It's
Yeah.
pretty hard to come by. But I mean, it's not as loaded as the media book is,
Mm.
but you still get some of the fun behind the scenes. And as I'm sure we'll talk about, the behind the scenes of Funny Man are as crazy, if not crazier, than the film itself. Which it's just a melting pot of
Yeah.
insanity. Everything with the film.
Yeah. For those unaware of Funny Man, the synopsis is after winning an English stately house in a game of poker, a record producer finds it to be haunted by a demonic jester whose intent is on murdering his family. At the time of this recording, as we've said, pretty difficult to see. Flick Vault had it up on YouTube. I'm not sure if it's still up there, but if you can find this media book, or like I said, by the time this comes out, someone will have released it for like $20. You should check it out if we entice you with this recording.
I'll do a commentary for it. If anyone out there,
Yes.
like, I will champion this thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about who's involved. The director is Simon Sprackling, who also wrote it. Also in 2022, he directed a movie called Poison Arrows, which is about dart players that are released from prison. I've got to see this movie 100%. He's also done some shorts, some interviews. He interviewed one of the actresses from Inseminoid, like a 15-minute bit. I'm not even sure what that was for. It stars Tim James as Funny Man. He also works second unit on many of Simon Sprackling's things. And Christopher Lee, as you mentioned, is in this movie. Unbelievable. He plays Callum Chance. He was, of course, in The Wicker Man, Lord of the Rings, Police Academy Mission to Moscow, Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf, The Whip and the Body, Count Dracula. It goes on and on. We all know and love Christopher Lee, but most of all because he was in Funny Man. I think we can say that.
His claim to fame,
Yes.
right? Then, I mean, I suppose, like, you read up on it, Funny Man was his first horror film in, I think, 20 years. I
Unbelievable.
think that's what they said. So for all the things to bring him back.
Yeah.
No, this was it.
We also have Pauline Black, who plays Psychic Commando. That's her character's name. Love it. We'll get into all of that. She's done some stage TV, but most notably the singer for the two-tone ska band Selector. Next, we have Benny Young playing the producer, and he was in Out of Africa and Chariots of Fire, so we have incredible pedigree for this movie.
See, there is no way to talk about any aspect of this film without making it sound like a Mad Lib.
Exactly. No, it's unbelievable. So there's an intro we should mention that's on the media book where the director is wearing giant fake breasts.
And he's watching this by himself in a theater that has come out.
And there's like a big warning page before it, but it's all in German. I have no idea what it says. Yeah, no clue. It's like presented by his own film company, it looks like. It's really interesting. Okay, so let's press play on Funny Man. We see a quote from Corinthians 3:18, I think that's how you'd say that, of anyone thinks he is wise in the age, let him become a fool that he may find true wisdom. Of course, yeah, perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself.
We are all smarter for having read and heard that.
Yeah.
It sets the tone for this academic film.
Exactly. We next see a bartender serving drinks in a poker game, and Christopher Lee is there. And I wrote, Christopher Lee is there? Yeah, he is. He bets the key to his ancestral home with a spade on it.
And it's worth noting these guys are all wearing Hawaiian shirts. The bar has palm trees on it, even though this is being filmed in the middle of a boiler room that has a Coke machine for some reason.
Yeah, the set dressing in this film is another reason to watch it, for sure.
What do you think this is? A wife swapping party?
This is the key to my ancestral home in England. It is a house which has given me great pleasure and good fortune. To me, of course, it is priceless, but to somebody like yourself, it is worth $1 million. I will see your 50,000 and I will raise you 950,000.
He loses to the record producer, and we next see a rocker driving like a Winnebago with boxes in it. There's some hitchhikers. He picks them up. I love this thing that the director does where he has this family going to this house, this remote place where they're going to be, taunted and murdered by this jester. But he realizes there's not a high enough body count. So he introduces these other characters, giving us really like no names. He's just like, they're there to be killed. I'm going to be honest. That's what's happening.
So the rocker is the brother of the producer. So because that factors into like this very bizarre subplot that develops later.
So weird.
But so he's bringing like the record producer, I think his name was Max. He's bringing Max's like furniture and boxes to this house. Along the way, he sees these people hitchhiking, tries to pick up Pauline Black's character, and then the other three join in. And would you like to describe these hitchhikers and their characteristics?
I mean, it's really difficult. One of them likes puppets.
One of them is literally just Velma from Scooby-Doo.
Literally, it's Thelma. Like, when we say it's Thelma, we don't mean like a version of someone that looks like the straight up Thelma, and her last name is Fudd. Which I was like, okay.
It's like tied in with an Elmer Fudd reference, which weirdly makes sense with how it plays up. But the orange turtleneck, the glasses, and she's like a bird watcher. She's got these binoculars calling out birds. And our fourth hitchhiker is known as the Hard Man, who just sits there reading porn mags and talking about fighting. So like a dude bro kind of a guy. So it's a very strange, eclectic group of hitchhikers, and that's all you find out about them. So if you want any backstory to any of these people, you're not getting it.
This director's not like Quentin Tarantino. He's not going to write a bunch of books about one character's entire history. We see the record producer arrives at the giant house, and one of the hitchhikers is doing tarot, and they get the jester. Back in the house, the producer's daughter sees a statue of the jester, and then we hear Lee doing some voiceover work.
Will you walk a little faster, said the whiting to the snail. There's a porpoise close behind us, and it's treading on my tail.
Which is such a treat, because at first when you see him in the beginning, you think, oh, okay, this is a one-day thing. He just showed up, he did this one thing, gets his name on on the DVD. But no, you got more to look forward to, people. There's a wheel of fortune they spin, and you get more Christopher Lee voiceover.
When the wheel of fortune spins, an ancient game of chance begins. But who could know or guess the rules? Adrift upon the ship of fools.
The family hates the house, so they decide, you know what, we'll wait for the brother, and then we're going to take off. We're just going to get out of here. But the jester comes out of the roof. I guess we call him Funny Man. I'm really unsure every time. I was like,
he's credited as Funny Man. The character himself is like partially a jester and partially a play on the character of Mr. Punch from British Puppet Theater. And the only explanation we get to his awakening is when Max spins this wheel.
Yeah.
You know, there's 4 spots on it. 2 of them say win, 2 of them say lose. There's that funny shot where it's like the wheel's point of view and you're watching things spin. I will say, whatever you think of this film, to the listeners listening to this, if you think this sounds amazing, if you think this sounds terrible, it's a gorgeously shot film.
Yes.
Like, for the budget they had, viscerally, it's a great movie to watch and look at, bare minimum.
Yeah.
But it wins on the lose of this wheel, and that is the only explanation we get to the arrival of the Funny Man.
Yeah, which you feel like is probably rigged anyway. Yeah, I love what you mentioned about how this is shot. I didn't take note of the cinematographer, shame on me, but definitely there's some Sam Raimi influences in some of these shots, like, or at least the Coen brothers, because some of these like reversal shots where you're seeing from the point of view of a spinning wheel, or, you know, it's very much like seeing through a rotary phone or something.
It's very dreamlike.
Yeah.
It's very much, the film goes off, there's different kind of dream worlds that the characters will find themselves in. And this is a film that I need to mention. I think it's listed as being made for between 50,000 to 100,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I have to give nothing but praise for, because for the budget they had to do what they did, visually, it's incredible.
Yeah. Also, the director would say, okay, we're going to shoot this scene this day, and they wouldn't have whatever they needed to shoot that scene. And so they'd be like, okay, what can we do? And they just turn towards the Funny Man and be like, well, we got you. So, and it's that kind of resourceful filmmaking I always applaud, because they don't have the budget. And to, you know, keep using the location and the characters in creative ways. And we'll get to more praise on that. But let's talk about the Funny Man. He's essentially a jester, which traditionally was a fool or a trickster hired by royalty to entertain their guests, often with some sort of bawdy or gallows humor, directly speaking to the audience, which is why we have this breaking of the fourth wall continuously through the movie.
Which really sets this one apart from compared to like a Leprechaun or a Freddy movie. There might be hints of that, but this movie, there is no fourth wall. It's gone.
Yeah, and it's something that I think is really important because it factors into the pacing of the film, because we have some really long shots that play out, which I think is directly theater influence, not like a movie theater. For instance, the scene where they're walking around looking at statues, this whole scene is allowed to play out without any edits, which sometimes can feel slow to like an American audience. It's like, come on, give us the thing, do-do-do-do. But like, I just think that that's an important thing to credit the film with, because I think it's intentional.
Oh, it is. We are being sat down for essentially a Punch and Judy horror movie. And that's why I think a lot of American audiences just, because this thing has pretty low ratings that I personally wouldn't give it, because I think if you're familiar with what they're trying to do and you realize how unique it is, it stands out. And like I said, I can't compare it to anything else. It truly is a lot of ingenuity.
Yes. No, 100%. Next, we see the record producer and his wife do coke in the most 80s bathroom, which is, as you said, like the set dressing and everything in this is just so awesome. The colors pop.
Since we're talking about the house, they've just gotten to the house. One of the things you learn when you watch the making of is this house was an abandoned mental asylum that they shot the entire film in. Every scene They just made up different rooms. It was all a mental asylum. So if that doesn't just hammer the nail in this
Yes.
film, I don't know what does.
And it's massive. It's a massive building. Like when they roll up to it, I'm like, oh, that's the oh, it goes on and on and on. Like it's quite the facility. The boy explores the house, runs into the funny man, and there's the lady playing tarot, and she says, and we're like, oh, it's the name in the movie. There we go. Funny man takes the kid's voice and then says to the parents, I'm going to go play with the funny man. And they're like, all right, whatever.
Oi, Bobby, Daddy,
What is it, sweetie?
are you having sexual intercourse?
Not at the moment, but there's a distinct possibility.
How are you doing, sweetheart?
Fine, thanks. I've been playing with the funny man.
Oh, well, that's great.
You have to give this movie credit for where it goes. This is not a movie that like pulls its punches. If it's going to do something, it does it, and it does it to the nth degree. Like we've already said, despite the amount of money they had, it's like it's all there.
Yeah, and the son, is the first one to get dispatched from the whole movie. And, Funny Man, this was originally based off a short film with most of the same cast, and I won't go into that now, but that short film it plays out similarly, but very different, and it's a lot more horror-based than this final.
Is that on one of your sets?
Yeah, I don't know if it's on the media book, but the short film is on this
Okay.
US DVD. The fate of the little boy is different. The fate of the father is different, and it's a lot gorier and more horror. So
Okay.
if I could find a way to get that to you, I will, because Funny Man was based on a short film that's similar but very different. It's a lot more horror
Okay.
based.
Well,
So
I want to
in the
hear
film-
some of those differences as we get towards the end here.
Oh yeah.
Back in the van, a dude puts a Punch and Judy puppet show on. For Americans, Punch and Judy is a traditional puppet show featuring Mr. Punch and his wife, Judy. The performance consists of a sequence of short scenes, each depicting an interaction between two characters, most typically Mr. Punch, and the other character usually falls victim to his slapstick humor. It was a staple in the British seaside scene, and that plays out more in the film.
Yep.
The record producer is putting tapes on and he's tossing them because he's not impressed, and then he gets a really cool synth song.
You got 4 bars to impress me. Come on. Yes, I do. Perfect.
Oh yeah, I mean this film has most of it I would consider like mid-90s EDM is
Yeah,
kind of
right.
although the opening credits play a country song,
Mm-hmm.
and towards the end
Oh my God.
when the subplot plays out, you get a couple different rock and roll in.
Yes.
So even the soundtrack is all over the place.
Yeah, the mom hears the boy, so she enters the love gallery, which is full of statues covered with sheets.
One of them is called Nobby.
Yeah.
and it's
I was like, all right. And there's a lot of things that the funny man says where I don't get the punchline. Like, I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know.
I think the joke with that is like it's just supposed to be making fun of British small talk because he walks in and he's just like, oh, hello there, come here often.
Yeah. It's like, what is happening? Which I love that. Enter the funny man. They peek at Art walking around in the very long scene that I said, and then she slowly backs away, runs out, but then keeps running into the same room, implying that the funny man can somehow bend space and time in some way.
He bends it for every single character in a completely different way for each and every one of them.
Yeah, it's so true. She keeps running back in, and he bludgeons her to death. And as I said, for the gore people, this movie has some great kills in it.
I would compare the kill aspect to it of Bad Taste and Dead Alive. It's very much almost in that splat stick period of like or where it's not meant to be taken that seriously, but it's still grisly enough to where you could be like, ooh, wow.
Yeah, we'll get to some of my favorite ones for sure. This is all watched by Christopher Lee through a card house, which I was like, what? Like,
Yeah, I have a theory about that when we get to the ending, but
Okay,
I'll wait.
great.
I'll wait for that then.
I'm excited. Meanwhile, Funny Man finds the daughter playing Game Boy. He dances around. She yells, jump. So he puts jumper cables on her ears and she erupts in flames. He's killed 2 children, people.
And the most cheery, it sounds like the most cheery music plays while this is happening.
Yeah.
In the short film, the same thing happens where the daughter, it's the same thing with the jumper cables, only in the short film version, at the end of it, you see the gory, charred body of the girl when it's done. And it makes me almost wonder, I'm like, wow, if they would have kept some of the short film stuff in the long term,
Yeah.
because it's the same kid actors between both of them. So yeah, the crazy stuff. But yeah, she just bursts into flames, her body's seizing all around, and the funny man's one-liner for that is just, look at the concern.
Yes. I was just like, what? All right. Kids just get no breaks in this movie, but we do. And we'll be right back after this. RoboCop. Did I catch you in time? Are you still there? Remember when Paul McCrane gets all melty from toxic waste and then splats on a car? Imagine that movie without that scene. Would it still be good? Okay, bad example, RoboCop rules, but his death adds flavor. And you know what else adds flavor? Marshall's Hot Sauce. You can wake up any boring meal with habanero carrot curry or serrano ginger lemongrass, just to name a few. These delicious and flavorful sauces will have you grinning bigger than Tarman in Return of the Living Dead. Marshall's Hot Sauce even has a new line of seasonings, including an incredible barbecue rub, where they soak dates in whiskey and then freeze dry them and powder them to add a little sweetness with no added sugar. There's also chicken marinade and even a volcano sparkle that'll make your body melt, just like in the movie Body Melt. The best part is you can enter VHUS Podcast at checkout for 20% off. So liven up those meals and your taste buds at marshallshotsauce.com and enter VHS Podcast for 20% off. And now, back to the show. And we're back. And the coked up record producer is in a blue light and there's cards flying around him. And I was just like, what is going on with this guy? But he's so coked up. I don't know if he knows what's going on.
He is now the only person left. The family has now been dispatched.
Yep.
So it's just him.
Yeah. Luckily for us, the bus or whatever it is arrives and the tarot gesto card is bleeding. So they decide, let's go in the house. And the tarot lady makes a crazy sound that is super loud. She just like screams into the building.
Yeah, like some sort of a bird call. Almost. It's
so crazy.
Rolling the tongue rapidly.
Yeah. Tarot lady injects something into her hand, and wait until you hear what happens with that. Because even in the film, we were like, at least I was like, what is that? What is she? At this point, I was like, is she a psychic person? Or I didn't look up her name, Psychic Commando, yet. And so I was just like, I'll just keep going with it. Apparently, she has a complicated life. So the group splits up to find the family. And next, the funny man pees all over the bus.
Nothing leads to this whatsoever. You just get the brother of the producer, who you could tell he's like a rocker guy. Mm-hmm. He's got this 80s like glam look to him already. And, and he turns to the puppeteer and the tough guy. You two go over there. And he refers to Velma as Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
He says, Joan Rivers, you go find my family or something.
Yeah, I didn't get that because I was like, clearly that's Thelma. Whatever. So the funny man finishes peeing all over everything. I guess that some of the backstory of the film is that the funny man would just walk around terrorizing people with his codpiece all the time. I guess that's what a funny man has to do. So the funny man finds a porno mag, and he goes off to, as he says, have a toss. The tarot lady burns a card, and it burns up his porno mag. It's just so sad.
There's no rest for the bloody wicked.
The two guys find a severed head and then kick it, and the funny man pretends he's a goalie.
The guys do not seem to make any realization that this is a head.
No.
The puppeteer guy who... To describe his character, he's kind of like a peace and love 70s hippie kind of guy. They pair him with the tough guy, and the tough guy's like, "Well, what are you talking about?" And and they see a head, but they don't realize it's a head, and he just goes, "What's that?" And the guy just says, "It's a 35 yarder," and he just kicks it.
Yep.
No setup.
That's it. Thelma's sliding around. She finds a duck feather. And we should mention again that she looks, Rona Cameron, who plays Thelma, looks exactly like Thelma in Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
It is
It's the orange turtleneck, the
dead
hair.
on.
It literally is just Velma.
Yeah. The high record producer is hallucinating a mountain of cocaine that he puts his face to, and he shoots up a slide into the nostril. And I was like, this is incredible. I mean, for what they're giving us, unbelievable.
He shoots out a chimney where the funny man is like just smoking. It makes a cocaine slip and slide.
Yeah. It is a wild sequence. Meanwhile, the Tarot Lady has gone down a long spiral staircase into Sod's Law Town, Population 1. These effects of this staircase in this weird little town, I absolutely love. I was looking at this just like the crazy winding staircase, like this other dimension situation. And it's super colorful. The way that the set's dressed is super rad.
There's a very strong, like dark green hue to the whole thing. There's like mushrooms and these, homes. It's garden gnomes everywhere.
Yeah, it's so cool. I just thought it was like one of the best things I'd seen in the movie. I was happy before that happened. And then once it went that big with the idea, I was like, oh, I'm all in for this. She explores the shacks. She finds a colorful house that we're assuming is Funnyman's. And next, Thelma follows more duck sounds. The jester makes a duck call through a cone and blows her brains out. And when I say blows her brains out, I mean we see flying brains with eyeballs with glasses still on.
Yeah, and you got to mention the dialogue for that, because by this point the record producer is being thrown around the house in a shopping cart for reasons. And at one point, he wheels by, he sees the funny man has a shotgun behind Thelma's head. He goes, "Duck." She goes, "Where?" And then blast off.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite kills. When it happened and I saw the flying brains with the eyes and the glasses still on, I was like, yeah, this is for...
See, that's one of those things, if I had never heard of this film, but I just saw that scene, I would go through hell and high water to track down, okay, what is that from? What Scooby-Doo movie did that happen?
Yeah, I almost wish that I had the intelligence and skills of making memes, because they never exist for the movies that I want. Like, I'm always like wanting to share something like this moment. Somebody get on that. One guy investigates a garage and the other comes across a shed marked Club Sexy. So here we go with things you'll never forget once you see it, because it's time to talk about the psychedelic wig event.
Psychedelic wig evening.
Yes. And I point out this character of the Hitcha is just known as the Hard Man.
Yes.
And he walks in and the funny man he's in a tuxedo, all welcoming him into this gentleman's club.
Yeah, and there's a sign that says psychedelic wig event, which I think the director said just came out of them having a conversation. And I was like, I think you need more backstory than a conversation about a psychedelic wig event.
Because he mentions in the interview that before it was a strip club, apparently the character of the Hard Man was originally supposed to get killed in this overly elaborate way involving a porno film. I would love to read the original script just to know what that would have entailed.
Yes.
But because, it's a horror comedy. It's a movie that clearly is not trying to just be a horror film. But in my opinion, the Club Sexy tangent, I think, is the funniest for a few different reasons how it evolves.
Well, for the listeners who haven't seen Funnyman, a psychedelic wig event, as you might be questioning what that is, it's when you put on a wig and the wig plays music in your head.
Goes from, I think the first one is disco, I think.
Yep. Yeah, so it's not that different from like silent discos where the music is in the headsets and no one else can hear it, except the wig plays it through your brain. So they were ahead of the curve in 1994. So Funny Man hits him with the wigs. We hear the different music. And the next, the Funny Man is a woman and a bartender. And just the costumes alone for Funny Man, I'm like, that must have been the budget. Like, how... It's so elaborate. The mask for Funny Man, we have to talk about that,
It's great.
It's so great.
It's awesome. I couldn't even tell how much of it was just prosthetics, how much was like a traditional mask, because he does kind of have the jester hat that kind of covers the back portion of his head, which was probably a cheaper way around that. But I mean, it looks fantastic. The costumes, like even without these different disguises that he wears, just the regular Funny Man outfit is extremely elaborate and does not look cheap.
No, I bet Alex Winter would be a huge fan of this movie, just judging from Freaks. For anyone that just is freaking out over Destroy All Neighbors, this is that same type of like prosthetic mask situation that like you go, oh, yeah, I love these creative like plasticky effects.
This film would make a great double feature with Freaked.
Yes.
So, I think if anyone
Freaks, not Freaks. Sorry.
if you want a good, to the listeners out there, if you want a good way to judge this movie, if you like Freaked, you will like this.
Yeah. Everything in this scene is breast shaped, like everything. It's very incredible. Back in the house, a crate explodes. There's papers everywhere. And back in the tunnel, the guy just keeps exploring. He finds the dead kid and runs into a wall, and his hands and top of his head sink through. And then he sees the gesture. He's at a beach, and his hands are mutated into Punch and Judy, but they're like gory versions of Punch and Judy.
It's showtime!
What the bloody hell's this thing? It's a bleeding lump. What's it look like, you stupid tart? Well, get the bullet out!
It's so crazy. He gets
it's in this booth on the beach.
Oh, it's right there.
And this is the character that was playing with the puppets in the bus, so this was kind of his ordeal. And it's a Punch and Judy show meets a horror film meets a Looney Tunes cartoon, because there's this little black sphere that just says bomb on it.
Yes.
That they put on the guy's head, blows up, and then the reveal of that back in the other world is incredible.
Yes, it's so rad. Again, like I said, I didn't think they'd go there, but they blows the top of his head off. It's amazing. Like,
and in the world behind the bridge, it just fall, and his hands are gone too.
Yeah,
like the body falls, and you just, like this on it, like under the nose is just gone. And I've seen movies with much higher budgets than this.
Yeah.
That makeup effects that are terrible.
Yeah.
And I think this really is just living proof. You have people that are working for little to no money, and just the ingenuity and the passion for it produce this film. And a death scene like that is grade A.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd say, that's the end of the movie. That's great. But it's not, because, oh my gosh, where the movie goes from here is even almost wilder.
Yeah, now we go back to Club Sexy, where the Funny Man takes on even another, arguably the most memorable, just because I think it'll stick in your head the most when you see it.
Well, first the jester sees through the TV that the tarot lady is down in his town.
What are you doing in my house?
Me just ship on your bed.
You did what?
You know, see how the atmosphere nice, no?
You dirty cow!
You not like it? Then get your big ugly Raz down here for an even bigger surprise.
And then her hand starts splitting open, and then it cuts back to Club Sexy, and the Funny Man has huge breasts, and the guy follows her out of the club, and then the Funny Man's there, and he asks for a light, and then he says the performer's his wife. It all plays out very comedically, and then he gets death by heel of a shoe, which I thought after this magnificent death we just saw, I was like, I'm a little underwhelmed, but also I get it.
I'll tell you why that made me laugh, because the Club Sexy thing, to me, is, I would say, the biggest setup. Because that's kind of the running joke with the film, is that the Funny Man is putting in way too much effort. Like, he goes through the trouble of the wigs, overcharging the guy, overcharging him on drinks, and just all these inconveniences. So it's just like a prolong. and then that's the payoff. So to me, that almost comes off as like an anti-humor joke in and of itself.
Sure. No, I get that.
And there's a pun, you get the point, And whenever the funny man approaches people, we should note there's not a single character in the movie that looks at him as if he's anything out of the ordinary.
Exactly. Yeah. They're just like, "Hey, guy, how's it going?" You're like, "What?"
He comes up to the hard man after the strip play. He's like, "Hey, mate, you got a light?" And they just start small, like nothing is out of the ordinary whatsoever.
Yeah. Next, the funny man throws a paper airplane at the bus driving brother, the rocker, and it's a letter where Mick Jagger wanted him to play in the Stones. Oh my gosh.
And the handwriting on the letter is terrible.
Yeah.
Like it's like a kid scribbling.
So good. And just when you think you've seen everything, the tarot lady's hand is getting worse, and she sees a man in a sombrero, and we get a full spaghetti western showdown in his town. He fires 6 guns, and it shaves her afro into the shape of a chicken, which also makes chicken sounds.
And then a chicken appears from behind the funny man and just jumps out.
Yep. And then she fires back because her hand is mutated into a gun. That's right. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. I can't believe the effect that they have here for the mutated hand. And then he's dancing like she's shooting.
It doesn't shoot bullets. It shoots lasers.
Yeah.
Too. I think that's another thing to mention.
Psychic power laser, sorry. And it's, very Looney Toony if people haven't picked up on the Looney Tune humor that's kind of going on in the background here. I love this mutated hand. She's clearly through playing games. Games. Interesting. Perhaps we should play a game. Ken, are you ready to play Funny Guy or Funny Lie? I'm going to give you 10 examples of either something attributed to a funny comedian or a lie.
Oh, okay. I'm up for the challenge.
All right. Number 1. Patton Oswalt once stood motionless in the background of an episode of King of Queens as a prank for a full 3 minutes.
That is true.
It is true. Well played. All right, off to a great start. Number 2. Jerry Seinfeld was originally a veterinarian but quit because he couldn't figure out what the deal was with all these sick animals.
I haven't heard that one. I'm going to guess false.
That's right, it's false. Number 3. Eddie Izzard ran 27 marathons in 27 days.
False?
That's true. He did it all for a charity, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are learning stuff tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he's a comedian who's learned entire languages just to perform in that language. So it's look up everything he's done if you want to feel bad and lazy about yourself. It's incredible. Number 4, Jerry Seinfeld was originally a cinematographer for porn, but eventually quit after not being able to figure out what's the deal with all these MILFs banging.
Wow. I feel like I would have heard that. I'm going to say false.
That's right, it's false. Okay. Number 5, Hannibal Buress hired a double of himself to attend Spider-Man Homecoming and paid them $500.
True.
That's right. He's such a wild person that he didn't attend his own movie premiere. Number 6, no, I'm just kidding.
We're definitely on the Seinfeld kick.
Paul Rudd actually farts in bed in the film This Is 40, and they left it in the movie.
I'm going to say true.
That's right. 100% true. Number 7, Whoopi Goldberg shaves off her eyebrows, and nobody knows why.
True.
True. No one knows when it started or why, but continues until this day. Number 8, Jerry Seinfeld was a makeup artist for The View, but quit after not knowing what the deal was with Whoopi Goldberg's eyebrows.
I'm going to say false.
Yeah, it's false, too. Once I started on those, I just couldn't let up with the Jerry Seinfeld. Number 9. You can and should pre-order the book T-Shirt Swim Club by stand-up comedian and podcaster Ian Carmel.
That is true.
That is true. Everyone should do that
do it
right now. Right now. Get that book. And number 10. In the Cheers spin-off Frasier, all the other characters were originally piles of expired chimpanzees, but after the pilot, they were all recast for upstaging Frasier in both charisma and comedic timing.
Without a doubt, that's got to be true.
Oh my gosh. Excellent
work. It all
work.
makes sense.
You win the game. Well played. Now back to the film. Sad Bro stares out the window where his brother shot out in a shopping cart, which I didn't mention, but after...
Thinking of his lost dreams of being a rock and roll icon.
Yes, and then he hears a voice calling him, and a droning sound of rock, and then sitars. And he has a psychedelic chat with the funny man, which if you're not watching, I mean, I don't get it. If you're watching this part of the film and not being like, oh, I've seen all this. This is like everything that happens in this. I was like, well, I've never seen this before. I've never seen that before. And when is the last time you watched a movie that had more than one time that you got to say that? And Funny Man has it in spades, I think.
It's every single scene.
Yeah.
There's nothing that gets repeated.
It's so good.
Flashbacks.
Say, man, it's your old friend, Dr. Blatter. Remember me? Long time no see. See?
What's happening, man?
Don't no one tell you nothing?
No.
You've been called to greatness, man. This is it. The big time. Wow. They're all waiting for you, man.
Who's waiting?
The angels are grooving us, man.
Right.
They're all there. There's Elvis.
Elvis?
Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Janice.
Jonas.
We get a rocked out Funny Man next, and he's wearing super crazy outfit. Again, the costuming for the Funny Man is wicked.
Well, I have to. Are you talking about that blue outfit?
Yeah, I am.
Do you know who that's supposed to be?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, this has to be addressed because this is going to change your perspective on that whole scene.
Okay, great.
In the UK, there was a very famous, through the 70s and 80s, a very famous children's presenter named Jimmy Savile.
Okay.
And he had a show called Jim'll Fix It, where he promoted a lot of singers and a lot of dreamers, and there would be sick children. You know, he was trying to be like his own Make-A-Wish Foundation, essentially.
Got it.
He had the blonde hair with a bowl cut, wore these bright blue outfits with music notes and stuff on them. And he was a beloved children's entertainer at the time, which is why he is presenting this rocker finally with his rock and roll dream. Well, it came out after Jimmy Savile died in the 2010s. He was a massive predator.
Oh, no.
Who had a very bad history. And this all came out after he died.
Of course.
So, I mean, anybody, there's been documentaries on it. Just Google Jimmy Savile. You'll hear the story. But this film came out 20 years before any of that came out.
Yeah.
And here they are doing a demonic version of Jimmy Savile as the funny man. So that in itself that story alone just sells. And of course, I can understand, you're not from the UK. I originally didn't know who Jimmy Savile was,
right?
But I showed the film to a friend of mine who said, as soon as the funny man showed up in that outfit, he goes, "Oh my God, they're not." And I'm like, "What's happening?" And then he pulled up, dude, read about Jimmy Savile, look at him, and I'm like, "Oh my God."
Whoa.
So
that's amazing. Yeah, thank you for that. I wouldn't have ever known about that terrible man.
I do not condone the support of Jimmy Savile. This is all for research purposes only, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Meanwhile, our psychic commando keeps exploding his town with her gun hand. I love every single second of it. And then in a weird turn of events, she kind of plops down on a bale of hay and he erupts through her butt.
Yeah, it kind of alien style, but the way the effect is played out. But yeah, I mean, the gore is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, even before he comes, because like it's kind of like Alien bursting through her chest and stuff. But even before that, the way her body and head are like palpitating.
Yeah, the bladder work.
Like his jester horns are coming out of her cheeks. Like the outstanding makeup effect. And if you listen to one of the director interviews that's on the media book, that scene pissed Christopher Lee off. He said, "Simon, what is this buggery?" And so they flew Christopher Lee around with them to Cannes and all these film fests. But because of that scene, Christopher Lee refused to support the movie.
Oh, wow.
So they took him around on the press tour for the movie for him to say he didn't like it because of that scene.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to disagree with, but I don't know if it's that scene.
That's what I mean. Every single detail about the film just makes sense with it. And while we're talking about her exploding the village, there's a making of documentary on there, and it's on YouTube too. So if you go on YouTube, you just look up Sorting Funny Man. this medieval village Sod's Law set, they borrowed from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein that came out the same year. And they said, take good care of it. And they wound up blowing it up.
Well, I saw that movie. This is better.
Absolutely. Like I love, because that's how me and my friends are. You know, our attitude about things, we go for broke, we try to get stuff done, and that's the entire mentality
Yeah.
of every single decision that went into this film. So it really rubs off the screen.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's just back to back, like, because the next thing, like, the rockin' dude becomes gold, then he becomes a comet, and then the sun, and then fades. It's like, it's such a crazy sequence. I mean, it's hard to not sound redundant talking about this movie, but it's just like, I had no idea that was going to happen. I didn't think I'd see that. And then you see it.
He shreds himself to death,
Yes.
pretty much. It turns into an acid rock trip, and then I don't even know. The only way I could describe that is that he became a literal star.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's this weird effect where it shoots in and he does like the Elvis smirk, and
it's unbelievable. And yet there it is. We then see the funny man return to his town, and the coked up producer is there just chilling. And then we see a mental institution, and Lee is there with the cards. We get a radio announcement, another rock song. We see Funny Man smoke a cigarette on top of the house. And then we see bloody feet, and it's the producer, and he's wearing a helmet of human arms.
in the shape of a jester hat, and his body is positioned on the staircase column where the original Funny Man statue was. And apparently the Funny Man can rewrite history, because the radio broadcast is like, since the tragic flying accident took rock and roll icon Johnny Taylor.
Yeah.
And you get this power ballad called Moment of Glory, which is like way good.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Deep in some dark cold place in my brain, I can switch on the light.
It's like, why is this song in this movie? But it's great, and it just adds to the quality.
Yeah, it's so. Every time I thought the movie was ending, it's not. And it wasn't because this movie was so long. It's just because I was like, oh, well, that's amazing. This is probably what they're ending the movie on. No, they got something else. And, then it's the end. And that's the wrap on Funny Man.
And it all ends with the end credits song, Funny Man, which is sung by a children's choir and Christopher Lee.
Yeah, yes.
While the Funny Man interjects and is like, hey, you in the third row with the big tits.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the movie? So even the end credits song is just mad.
Yeah, I was so glad that you brought this movie up, because I did not give it its due when I saw it. Like, I just was like, yeah, it's that, like I said, that Wishmastery kind of thing. But they weren't riffing off Wishmaster. They were doing their own thing entirely. And my brain at the time was just like, yeah. But seeing it in its presented now, like, it's, for one, like we said, completely gorgeous. You can appreciate all the artistry that went into creating the movie. And then just all those details, like you said, the end song, it's just like, it's effort people don't put into stuff, I feel like, enough. And every detail just feels like a signature of Funny Man, the movie.
Yeah, and like I said, if anyone, you go on YouTube, you could find Sorting Funny Man, which is the making of documentary. That's just as good. And if you can track down, I'll have to look to see if it's on the short film version, if it's on any of the discs of the media book.
Yeah.
Because that film, it plays it where it's not Christopher Lee, and it's a different actor playing the dad, the producer. But the wife is the same actress, and the two kids are the same actors. And it's weird. The father gets killed because he gets sucked up a chimney, and then his guts fall down into the fireplace.
Yeah.
And then the little boy, the Funny Man, like, takes him, and he doesn't kill him right away. He, like, takes him along with him the whole time, and he gets immortalized in a painting. And the Funny Man's reveal is a little different too, where he's holding the mask in front of his face.
Yeah.
And he, like, it's much more serious, and it's much more horror-like. And the short film ends just with gore and body parts laying everywhere. Like, it's very different tone-wise than what this would become.
Yeah, well, I think it's really smart. I think that their use in humor and stuff helps the film from being sort of a stuffy, castle film, and instead you have like the weird levity and tone shifts constantly that I was just like not prepared for. And I love that sort of off kilter feeling of watching something and being like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like we were just talking pre-roll about foreign films, and one of the reasons I enjoy diving into films is if it's not like the Western culture, I don't know the initial point of view even, and so I'm already off guard, and I don't know the rules of the world. And something like this, I was just like, I don't know what they're riffing on, I don't know what they're referencing, so it's just a complete delight.
Yeah, it's a fever dream of a
Yeah,
movie, and
yeah,
it's one that like the all the fourth wall breaking and just the style of humor and the way the funny man interacts. It's like you have no choice. You're coming along for this ride. We
yeah,
are. It's like you're there. It's like a Ferris Bueller type vibe with how often they do that, but it's with this type of movie and the way it juggles the bizarre tone. I I love it. Like
yeah.
I'm unashamed to say that this is one of my favorite discoveries just ever.
Yeah, and I hope that when somebody does put out the new ultimate version of Funny Man, that I can read what is on the discs, because I might have that short film on here somewhere, but I don't know where.
There's a Blu-ray that has a really nice interview with the director on it. And one of the DVDs actually has some deleted scenes, which are good. There's more with the family
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning. And I took note one of the deleted scenes because they cut a lot of stuff with the kids. There was originally more of that, which I would have left in because when they walk into the house, the kid looks at the funny man statue that's on the staircase column and he goes, "Hey, look at that funny man."
Oh yeah, see, there you
I'm
go.
like, I'm like, why wasn't that kept in? That's like direct payoff. And then there's a running joke with the daughter playing her Game Boy. She has her music headphones in,
Yep.
and the dad, the record producer, keeps taking them out, and she keeps going, "What?" And again, that's like another one of those setup things for when
Right.
the funny man would do it. Then it's like, oh, I did, I mean, it doesn't hurt the experience of the movie, but you see stuff like that, and you're like, oh, that was originally much more well set up. Like there
Mm-hmm.
was more to this than maybe how random it seemed.
Yeah. The media book also comes with some awfully lovely imagery of the Funny Man.
Yeah, there's photo galleries of him just with women
It's
like
so
everywhere
weird.
on the streets.
Yeah, it is. It's wild. It's a wild thing that exists. I'm super stoked on it. And I'm so glad we got to have this conversation about the Funny Man. Any closing thoughts?
This is a movie that if you're a fan, if I mean, by this point of this episode, if this is something that's up your alley.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's absolutely criminal that this film does not have a gigantic
Mm-hmm.
cult following in the United States. Like I said, almost any scene can be clipped out of this and turned into a meme.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild. Like people talk about the same stuff, like oh, The Room, Sharknado, Troll 2, and even though I wouldn't put this in the same category
No.
as those because I don't think this is an unintentionally bad movie. I think they made exactly what they were trying to
Mm-hmm.
make,
Yeah.
which I applaud it all the more for.
Same.
It truly stands out. And like I said, it's one of those things when I first discovered this and I knew nobody else that had ever been made aware of it, it's one of those feelings. It's like we've willed this into existence almost. And it's
Yeah.
just
Well, and it's something that when people do, and they should look up the artwork or the poster or even just the Funny Man, it's just so cool. It's like, and if you are from a generation or just somebody who appreciates these like masked characters, that things like say like like you mentioned, Freddy Krueger and, people that have these bigger characters than just like, Jason or Michael Myers, if they didn't talk, but like these nightmare villains, if you will.
the
This is,
90s were great about that because you had
yeah,
Rumpelstiltskin, you
yeah,
had Brain Scan, the trickster. There's
yeah,
definitely like an element of that in
for
here.
sure. Yeah.
Of course, Leprechaun, Uncle Sam even
Mm-hmm.
that's a crazy one.
Yeah. And like Funny Man should be right up there with all of those. And yet for some reason, something's keeping it from finding its audience. So hopefully this conversation will play at least a small role in getting more people to discover it.
The media book, I did, like you said, I don't know how easy and or hard. I paid about $50 for this on eBay. That's when I found
Yeah, mine was
this
like probably
version.
60.
Yeah, so it's you get your money's worth with it because it's
Yeah.
loaded. The presentation of just the box
Yep.
is amazing, and can't really read too much of the thing, so you
No.
kind of just gotta play around. It is, and we should mention it is all region Blu-ray ABC, so it doesn't matter. You can watch it anywhere.
Yep. Yeah, that's good to mention. I was watching it on a multi-region, so I didn't even think about it. I just automatically threw it on there because that's what's in the studio. Um, but yeah, it's great. I don't know what else I can say about this incredibly fascinating and strange movie. Ken, where can people find you?
My people can find me. I'm all over social media and YouTube. You could find me on my Instagram is just my name. It's all lowercase, no dots, no periods. It's just Ken Potocki, all one go. I've got some interesting stuff coming up because I should mention, just if anybody listening to this is like, who is this guy and why is he talking about this movie? I spent time at the Second City here in Chicago. I have a literal bachelor's degree in comedy, which I obtained from the Second City in conjunction with Columbia College Chicago. I've managed a lot of different online copywriting and web broadcasts that focus on humor and comedy. So that's how I got roped into talking about Funny Man. So if anyone there is wondering, that's how I came to be. But yeah, you could find me on Facebook, Ken Potocki, Instagram, Ken Potocki. Got some great stuff coming up. There is if anyone out there is a true crime fan, acclaimed filmmaker John Borowski is coming out this year with his 8-episode documentary series, The John Wayne Gacy Murders: Life and Death in Chicago. I have a fun role in that. Can't say too much about it yet, but for all the true crime fans out there, that's going. So it's always something exciting and usually humorous in my life, which perfectly matches up with the tone of 1994's classic opus, Funny Man.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thoroughly enjoyed meeting you and having this conversation, and hopefully you'd be willing to come back sometime.
I would absolutely love that. You just let me know. It'll be something crazy each time.
Yeah, I have a feeling
We will shed light on some classics that, like Funny Man, that need to be. I mean, the British are great with that stuff. There's another horror comedy from the UK starring Andy Serkis. It's called The Cottage.
Oh, yes. Yep.
That's one of my favorites. It's much more grounded movie than Funny Man is, but for those listening, go into that movie blind. It's a roller coaster. It's absolutely delightful. So the Brits know their stuff.
They do.
Funny Man is the magnum opus, fever dream, Scooby-Doo rock and roll nightmare that you never knew you needed, but once you see it, you know your life is better off forever.
Yes. Well, thanks again for being here. And as always, I'm Dirk Marshall, and this has been VH Us.
Would you really want